With this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Sponsors of a bill to create a prescription drug affordability board, which is included in the Senate Commerce Omnibus Finance Bill, were joined by Attorney General Keith Ellison and other supporters for a press conference. Here's that event.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm State Senator Kelly Morris, and I represent District 45 in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. I'm also a physician, and I practiced in Minnesota for more than 20 years. And I've watched my patients struggle to afford the medicines they need over the years, and that struggle has only gotten worse. With those patients in mind, I was proud to author the Prescription Drug Affordability Board bill and get it passed in the House. And that's why I'm proud to carry it in the Senate now. And now, finally, we're here today because for the first time, the Minnesota Senate is going to pass a Prescription Drug Affordability Board off the floor in the Commerce Omnibus Bill. The Prescription Drug Affordability Board, or PDAB as we affectionately call it, will have the authority to set upper payment limits on certain high-cost drugs that cause an affordability challenge to patients or our healthcare system, functioning much like our Public Utilities Commission. Prescription drugs are not just another consumer product. They are a public good and should be treated as such. This bill was the first recommendation made by the Attorney General's task force on lowering pharmaceutical drug costs, and we are so glad to have our Attorney General here to speak more about that. This bill has been a long time coming. It's a critical first step to lowering the cost of prescription drugs in Minnesota. Having carried this bill in the House, I've seen the enormous power and pushback from the pharmaceutical industry before. But this year, the industry has taken it to a new level. It has invested significant lobbying power and advertising dollars to create fear and confusion to try to stop this bill. They've run full-page color ads in the Star Tribune. They've run radio ads. They've even paid for billboards all over the state to try to scare patients and intimidate legislators. I am so proud that my colleagues are not having it and are choosing to stand with patients and their well-being over pharma.
That's right.
A large coalition that includes labor, faith organizations, farmers, and community organizations have come together to support PDAB. Patients across Minnesota need their medicines today to stay healthy. And if they can't afford them, they can't access them. Drugs don't work if people can't afford them. There is urgency to this action, and I cannot wait for us to pass it off the Senate floor later today. With that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Jessica Intermill.
Thank you so much, Senator Morrison. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Intermill. I am a Minneapolis mom, wife, and small business person. And my story started a little bit more than a decade ago when I was a healthy 31-year-old. I decided with my husband that it was time to have kids, but about 4 weeks into my pregnancy, something went wrong. First, my fingers started swelling, and then my joints started to stiffen, and fluid started pooling inside my wrists. And every day got just a little bit worse until one day I couldn't even make a fist. I was 7 months pregnant when I saw my first rheumatologist. He took one look at me from across the room and diagnosed me with rheumatoid arthritis. I went home, I cried, and 22 days later I delivered our child. I have required care for every one of the 11 years since. Now, rheumatoid arthritis is a vicious disease. It makes a person's body turn on themselves. Inflammation attacks your whole body. And it's incredibly painful. Just turning a key in a lock made it feel like my knuckles would split open. I didn't even trust my hands to have the strength to hold my infant. The closest I can come to healthy is to take a handful of pills every day and inject myself with Actemra every week. It's not a cure. There is no cure. But this regimen controls my symptoms and works to stop my disease from progressing, and for that I'm truly grateful. But the base price for Actemra is over $9,000 per month. Even with the discounts that my insurance company negotiates, Actemra costs $4,400 per month. That's a discounted price of $150 per day. every single day, including every single day of the 3 years that I have brought my story here to the Capitol, airing my medical trauma, begging Minnesota lawmakers to lower drug costs. My disease and my drug costs don't stop for Easter recess or for the end of session or for any election or re-election. If I want to be able to function, I have to find a way to pay for a drug that's priced 4 times as much as my mortgage. And it's not just the brand name drugs that are a problem. I have paid $100 per month for generic methotrexate, a drug that's 80 years old. Paid $130 per month for generic hydroxychloroquine, a drug that was first approved in 1955. I need both of those along with spironolactone and folic acid every day to treat my rheumatoid arthritis, and the cost of these must-have maintenance drugs adds up. Patients like me don't have any choice but to pay this ransom for the drug companies and the pharmacy benefit managers and the insurance companies for our health. I am so excited that we're doing better than this. We are going to get prescription drug costs under control, and I am proud to stand with leaders like Senator Morrison and Representative Stevenson who are willing to pass real solutions for real Minnesota patients. Thank you.
Good morning. Just get my name is Kate Lynch. I'm a member of SEIU Healthcare Minnesota in Iowa, and I'm also a nurse. As a nurse, I see every day what a difference prescription drugs can make in patients' health, from keeping blood pressure down to helping stop the spread of cancerous cells. When patients can take their medicines as prescribed, they're better able to manage their health conditions, giving them a better quality of life and preventing more serious health problems down the line. But right now, too many patients aren't able to take the medications that are prescribed to them because of their cost. These patients deal with more pain and discomfort, often while their conditions worsen, making them harder and more costly to treat later. The current system isn't helping patients, it's hurting them, and it needs to change. We have also felt the effects of high drug costs within our membership, including the death of Alex Smith, the son of one of our members, due to the insulin price gouging. Powerful pharmaceutical companies may want to defend the status quo. It's what allows them to rake in profits. But it's patients who are paying the price for this system. Big Pharma may also say that efforts to rein in prices will stymie them and prevent them from being able to make prescription drugs. But too many people already can't access the drugs they need. Medications don't work when people can't take them. It's not a surprise that this bill is being championed by so many doctors, nurses in the legislature. I'm proud of the lawmakers and Attorney General Keith Ellison for standing up to make this system work for people. Not just wealthy corporations, but patients, union members, and medical professionals are all standing with you. Let's get this done without delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica and Kate. And now I'm proud to introduce our Attorney General, Keith Ellison.
Thank you, Senator, Dr. Senator. Let me also say thank you to you, Representative Stevenson, and thank you to all the legislators here, and thank you to Jessica and Kate for telling your stories. It takes such tremendous courage to do so. One of the reasons why I ran for Attorney General in the first place is I was at a community meeting, and a very nice lady walked up to me, and she said, "I got to talk to you." Like, okay. And she tells me a story that I will never forget. She said to me, my son was a very talented young man, was trying to start a restaurant. He aged off of the Affordable Care Act, going from 25 to 26. He was on my insurance, and we could afford the insulin he needed as a type 1 diabetic, but when he was on his own, the prices just got so high, $1,300 every time a month, and he could not afford it, particularly with trying to lead his life. He didn't come to me because he was trying to make it on his own and didn't want to keep asking his mom for money. And so he began to ration his insulin. And his body, after a while, went into ketoacidosis, and he died. That young man's name was Alex Smith. And that mom of his and his dad started something called Insulin for All. And when I was talking to her, she said to me, my son, he died from diabetes, and it occurred to me, I said, he didn't die from diabetes. He died because he couldn't afford insulin. He died because he couldn't afford to live. He could not afford his life. And some folks somewhere are collecting enormous bonuses because of the pain and suffering that they inflicted on this family. I find that really bad. Really bad. And I believe that the people of the state of Minnesota have every right to do something about it, which is why I'm so proud of my legislators and the activists who are going to pass the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. Hope you get this. Now, it is not at all shocking that the folks who benefit so much from the suffering of others use those profits to push forward propaganda like this. The people pushing prescription drug affordability boards don't want you to read between the lines. Come on. The bottom line is, we have every right to afford our lives, every right. And one of the things that we discovered in this very important report, this is one of the first things I did, the report of the Minnesota Attorney General's Office Advisory Task Force on Lowering Pharmaceutical Drug Costs. This is what one of the main things that we did with this is we dissected why and how the drugs are so high. This is not market. This is not a free market. This is anything but a free market. The pharmaceutical industry relies on government intervention to keep their profits high all the time, whether it's through abuse of the patent system, subsidies that they get, all kinds of things. The last thing in the world they want to do is be in a free market. They oppose importation and reimportation laws. It is something that, it is the way they do business, but time is up. The bottom line is the time is up. Big Pharma is trying to stand in the way, and all of us, lawmakers, patients, Minnesotans, must stand together. Big Pharma has one of the biggest, most well-funded lobbying operations to block policies like this, and they can lobby and they can run these paid ads, and they could even file lawsuits. We are there to confront them and fight them in court if we need to, as we are right now on the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act. No sooner than the governor's ink was dry on the pen when he signed the bill, these people were dragging us to court to try to tear apart this bill because all we wanted to do was make sure that we didn't have any more people suffer like Alex Smith and his family. So the momentum is on our side. The good cause is on our side. And it's time to pass this bill. And I give you Representative and Chairman Zach Stevenson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and thank you, Senator Morrison, and everyone else for being here today on this important issue. We hear from our constituents all the time about the toll that the high cost of prescription drugs is having on their lives. Every day, there are Minnesotans across this state who are having to choose between paying for the mortgage and paying for their prescription drugs, who are choosing between rationing their food and rationing the medication they need to live. No Minnesotan should be having to make that choice. And it's important to remember that when we see ads like these, the money that is going to pay for these ads is coming from the people who are making those choices every day. That's how they're paying for this. That's how they're paying for the army of lobbyists that they have here at the Capitol. It's outrageous, and it needs to stop. And that's what the Prescription Drug Affordability Board would do by setting cost the limits on the amount that people can pay for their drugs throughout the system. And that's really important to understand, that it's at every layer of the supply chain that these upper payment limits would apply. So no one benefits but the consumer, who actually will pay a reasonable price for the drugs they need to live. This is really important legislation, and that's why it's no surprise that Big Pharma is fighting so hard to stop it. And they're using the classic play that they always use, and that frankly everyone in the health industry uses whenever someone tries to get at reasonable form, which is to point the finger. It's not us, it's the plans, it's the PBMs. And if you go after the plans and say it's not us, it's the PBMs, it's Big Pharma. If you go after the PBMs and say it's not us, it's the plans and Big Pharma. It's a big circle of pointing the finger at other people, of delay tactics. It has to end because people need help now. We're going to deliver it in the House. I'm so excited to see it be delivered in the Senate, and I am really excited to hear from my friend Senator Housechild.
Boy, did we make some folks mad. And we made the right folks mad. In my day job, I raise money for patients and family as part of a healthcare foundation for families and patients that can't afford the care and the prescription drugs that they need. But no family should have to rely on fundraising and GoFundMe pages to get the prescription drugs that they need. And that's why I got into this race. So I revel in this fight. I revel in being the David to this dang Goliath that we're facing from Big Pharma. And so I'm just thrilled. And I'll have to say, I know others have showed the ads, but these folks have such deep pockets. I was so surprised. I was driving around here around the Capitol. There's a billboard attacking me in the Twin Cities. So you must have so much money to attack us. So for those of you that don't know where I represent the Canadian border. I represent 200, 300 miles away from the Capitol. And they're putting up a billboard in the Twin Cities attacking me for standing up for patients and families. And then I had this elder woman come into my office, and she brought me this newspaper ad, and I thought, oh, geez, I'm going to have to explain this. I'm going to have to explain why I'm standing up for Big Pharma, because they're twisting the words around, and they're saying that I'm standing up for Big Pharma. But she didn't buy it. She brought this in and she said, did you know that the insurance companies and the Big Pharma are running ads against you in our local newspaper? This is a newspaper up on the Canadian border that they're running an ad against me on. And I just thought, good. She understands. This woman who is trying to afford her prescription drugs absolutely understands what is happening here. Minnesotans aren't stupid. Minnesotans and our seniors and people that need these prescription drugs know exactly what is going on. And that's why this is going to be the easiest vote that I take this legislative session. So I am thrilled. Thank you, Senator Morrison. Thank you, Representative Stevenson. Thank you, Attorney General Ellison, for this fight and for laying the groundwork for us doing this. Let's get it done. Let's stand up for patients and families. I am so damn excited. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Heather Gustafson, Senate District 36. It's 9 cities, but it's mostly Vadnais Heights, White Bear Lake, Lino Lakes area. Also got an ad. And my favorite part of this, it says, you'll be on the record. Good. Put me on the record for this. Good. These attacks are unequivocal lie. They're part of a multi-million-dollar fear-mongering companies, a Big Pharma. They are trying to kill legislation aimed at stopping them from getting richer by grossly overcharging for the medicine that people need, people have to have in order to live, to thrive, to survive. My DFL colleagues and I, led by Senator Kelly Morris and Zach Stevenson, have a bill, SF 168. It's going forward. It's going to create this board that oversees pharmaceutical costs. This is basically what I said when my supporters called me too, and I didn't know either when they pulled out the ad or they got the email or the phone call. And this is what I said to them, and they said, oh, good. Keep doing it. That's great. Not one person came and said, I want you to answer for this. All of them said, keep going. The attack ads claim this is going to raise prices or sell you out to insurance companies, or that I'm some sort of a sellout, that I don't care about folks in my district or across the state. They only make me double down on my support for this bill. The people in our district do deserve lower costs and affordable treatment. The groups behind these ads should be thoroughly ashamed of spreading lies to kill bills like this. We have seniors who have spent their lives working, who are now struggling to make ends meet because their prescription costs are wiping out their savings. And now we have out-of-state group coming here, spending millions to spread lies so they can keep making a fortune by gouging the most vulnerable. And not only, again, does this make me double down on my support for SF 168, I encourage you to give the bill your full support too. Learn about it, read about it, see how this is going to benefit all of us. Most importantly, I encourage you to reach out to the legislators who don't support SF 168 and ask them why they're okay letting the pharmaceutical companies continue to make a fortune on the backs of vulnerable Minnesotans. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are happy to take any questions you might have. Our passion has stunned you into silence.
Can you talk about how you decided on the ceiling for the drug costs that you have in the bill? Or how the board will determine that?
You want to go on? Go ahead. So what the board does, it will consider drugs individually and look at the whole supply chain and make an individualized determination for any drug that it addresses. And importantly, it's not going to look at every single drug. It's going to intervene in places where there's the most harm being done and where there's the most to be benefited by having an upper payment limit. But there's no flat cap. It's more looking at each drug and figuring out what is the correct upper payment limit for that drug.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that this will not apply to every single drug. It's just the outliers that are very high cost or increase at a very high rate.
So in the case of something like insulin, had this affordability board been in place, say 10 years ago, how would that have impacted the price of insulin? Would it have not gotten so high that people had to ration? Would the price have stayed lower so that people like Alex Smith didn't die?
I think that's a great question. And yes, the answer is yes. It would have triggered a review of insulin, and it would have, after the board, under the advice of the advisory council, would have determined what an upper payment limit that would be affordable for people would have been implemented. So tragically, you're right. We may still have Alex Smith here today had this board been passed earlier.
Could the Attorney General remind us where you are on the insulin lawsuits?
Yeah. I didn't check in with my staff today, but I can tell you that the best up to date I have for you now is that we argue that at the district court level it was dismissed, and we argued lack of standing, and the most recent appellate decision is that they had standing. We are still very much in the fight and very confident we're going to win, but the dismissal on standing grounds was turned away by the appellate court. But we're still we haven't begun to fight. We're in it and we're going to win it. No, we don't have a date yet.
Can you talk about the threshold when the board would step in to start talking about a cap? Like what has to be happening? Do you have to hear from a number of patients? Do you have to, I guess, how does that discussion begin?
So there's a few different triggers in the bill. Importantly, it connects with some of the other work that's been going on in the legislature in recent years, including around drug price transparency. So that allows sort of referrals to the board to consider whether to do an upper payment limit on coming from various other places, whether it's the Department of Health or the Board of Pharmacy or other things. And there's an advisory council that's created in the board that also can make recommendations to the board. So that, a significant part of the work is choosing which drugs to intervene in and looking for those cases where they can do the most good, help the most people, save the most money. And if I just want to say one thing, that I think that the question about the lawsuits is important because it just goes to show another tactic that Big Pharma uses to try and defeat these things, which is to file ridiculous lawsuits, to tie things up in court, delay, obfuscate, do anything they can to do this. And then they turn around and they say, they're suing in Maryland on, which has enacted a prescription drug affordability board. And those lawsuits have caused the board to not be able to act while they're dealing with the lawsuits. And then they come here and they say, the board in Maryland isn't even functional. Why would you do this thing that doesn't work? And they're like, well, why doesn't it work? It's because of your lawsuits and the way that you're acting. They will do anything to stop this. They will do anything to protect their absurd profit margins that are hurting Minnesotans.
That's right.
Anything else?
Well, so then, is it likely then that if this legislature passes this and it starts, that there's just going to be more lawsuits and it will be ineffective here in Minnesota because it's tied up in court?
We have not seen, I'll let you speak, Mr. Attorney General, but just one comment. We have never seen a drug reform not cause a lawsuit. The pharmaceutical industry has, as we've discussed ad nauseum this morning, very deep pockets, and they will fight it, which is why this bill has been very carefully crafted to withstand those challenges. And I'll defer to our Attorney General.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Actually, I don't really need to say anything else because you said it perfectly. But I will just emphasize, we are absolutely ready for court challenges because one thing we can count on is that they're coming. Absolutely. But we're not worried about that. That's what we do all day is fight folks in court who need to be fought in court. Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone, for being here this morning.
With this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Chairs of the committees representing the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee, Jobs, Labor, and Commerce Committees all called a press conference to talk about their respective omnibus bills that will be heard today on the Senate floor. Here's that media event.
Good morning. I am Senator Bobby Joe Champion. I am also the President of the Senate. I stand before you on behalf of our wonderful leader, Carrie Diesick. So she sends greetings, and I always think it's important to acknowledge our leader and to reaffirm the fact that she is leading our caucus. So every step of the way and the bills that you're going to hear about today is a reflection of her leadership. I think it's important for you to know that the Senate DFL majority is doing the work Minnesotans have sent us here to do. Yesterday, for an example, we passed our first budget bill, a strong bipartisan bill that invested in agriculture, rural development, and broadband development. And today we are passing 3 more omnibus bills: commerce and consumer protection, judiciary and public safety, and last but certainly not least, jobs and labor. You know, one of the things that we often reiterate, and I hear our majority leader always saying this, that Minnesotans told us that they want to end gridlock and delays in getting things done, and elected a DFL majority to do so. So budgets represent our priorities in action, and our budgets reflect the values Minnesotans share. When this session began, our caucus promised to advance legislation to lower costs, to build an economy that works for all of us, and to ensure safety for Minnesotans in their communities. This is exactly what these bills do. Now, I want to introduce, without any further delay, Senator Matt Klein, who will speak to the Commerce and Consumer Protection budget, and he will also introduce our next speaker. So thank you so very much for being with us today, Senator Matt Klein.
All right, thank you. Thank you, President Champion. My name is Matt Klein, and I'm a state senator from District 53, which is the communities just south of St. Paul in the metro area. I'm the chair of the Commerce Committee this year, Commerce and Consumer Protection. We've been really glad and proud to take up the work of consumer protection for the people of the state. We've already passed through our committee a provision on catalytic converter theft that passed off the Senate floor, and that was just one step. Today we'll take up the rest of that work. Consumer protection prevents fraud and abuse. It keeps money in Minnesotans' pockets. Let's stop predatory actors from taking advantage of students and seniors. What you'll see in my bill today are provisions to prevent price gouging on generic drugs and create the Prescription Drug Affordability Board, keeping medicines more affordable for Minnesotans. You just heard about that at the previous press conference. We are going to establish a student loan advocate within the Department of Commerce to address the high burden of student debt that Minnesotans are carrying. We are funding a senior safe fraud prevention program to prevent scams on our seniors and delay financial transactions that appear suspicious. We are establishing a mental health parity and substance abuse accountability office to sort of drive our state forward in ensuring that mental health is treated on an equal plane with physical illness. And we are establishing an alternative to predatory lending and payday lending practices with the Exodus lending program. We're funding that this year. And so I'm proud that these initiatives will protect Minnesotans, keep money in Minnesotans' pockets, and I'm grateful to have the bill passed today. And with that, I will introduce Senator Jen McEwen. Is it right?
Why don't we? I'm going last. So
Oh, okay. Well, very good. Well, it's a real pleasure to join you today to talk about our budget bills. We're very proud of these bills, and as President Champion said, what these budgets truly represent is that the Democratic Farmer Labor Party is getting the job done this session. We were elected to do this work, to get bills passed, and we are doing that. In the Senate Labor Committee this session, we have heard from dozens of workers who have come to testify, to tell us about their experiences in their workplaces, and many have been organizing and working for years to bring some changes that they've seen need to happen. And so over the session, hearing from all of those workers, and out of that, we have created this budget bill, the labor omnibus budget, which has been folded in and is now part of the jobs bill. But just a couple highlights from our labor budget bill. One piece that we're very excited about is the Meat and Poultry Worker Protection Act, protecting meat packers in these very dangerous jobs, making sure that their work is honored and that they have a reduced instance of injury on the job. We're also creating a nursing home workforce standards board. That's something that people have been working on for some time. We know that wages need to be raised in our nursing homes, but we also know that our frontline workers who are on the scene doing this work, caring for our elders, caring for people who need that extra care, they know, they are there, they see what the standards need to be. So giving them a seat at the table to create standards is critically important. They've told us that, and they've told us why, and we're moving forward with that. We're also moving to ban non-compete agreements. So I think that everybody can agree that this has reached a real problem in our society, where we have businesses, oftentimes very large corporations, coercing employees upon entering employment into signing these agreements that are not in fact agreements at all, but a coercion that disallows them from seeking out and taking employment with a competitor. So it really binds them in, and it prevents competition in the workplace. It prevents movement of workers into better employment and keeps wages low. And lastly, of course, in our labor omnibus bill and our budget bill, we have a lot of workforce development projects happening. Some of them, especially that I am excited about, is funding for clean energy apprenticeships to transition our workforce to good jobs, family supporting jobs, thriving jobs in green energy and infrastructure, as well as we're very excited about the ergonomics division of the Minnesota OSHA to modernize how we're approaching workplace injuries in Minnesota. Again, Minnesota will lead in this way. This is going to be a very exciting innovation, the ergonomics division. With that, my closing comments is that the DFL really is the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And it has been a real honor this session to hear from Minnesota workers and to carry out that tradition and to bring it forward into this session. So our siblings in labor and workers throughout Minnesota, we hope that this labor omnibus bill will be an honor to the work that you do and bring us forward into the next generation in a very good space. So with that, I will introduce my colleague, Senator Latz.
Thank you. I'm Ron Latz, Senator from St. Louis Park, District 46, Chair of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. We are making in this bill an $880 million funding investment that is going to bring significant advances in criminal justice, civil justice, public safety, and human rights. We really have four buckets or themed categories into which we're making these investments. They include preventing crime, being partners in public safety with our law enforcement and other justice partners, holding offenders accountable for their conduct, and supporting victims of crime. In the area of preventing crime, we are making game-changing and historic investments in youth intervention and in preventing recidivism. The only way we're going to bend the curve long-term toward reducing crime in our society is to identify and take care of those youth that are beginning to show signs of going down the wrong path, giving them the support that they need, the guidance that they need to change their course. We are going to be investing in community crime and violence prevention grants, in the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, crime reduction strategies. Youth intervention programs is going to get a substantial influx, and there are going to be other grants as well, focusing on community and youth intervention. And we're also going to be reducing forensic evidence backlogs. In terms of being partners in public safety, we have funds in there for law enforcement recruitment and retention. We're going to be making massive funding investments in our public defender system and in our civil legal services so that the criminal justice system will work more smoothly and in a timely manner and will protect the constitutional rights of everyone who's involved in the system. We'll be giving full funding to the Department of Human Rights, which is almost historic. It's been many, many years since they haven't had the existence of the department or the scope of the department on the chopping block in this legislature. And we are not doing that to them this year. We're recognizing their value and importance, and we're funding them accordingly. And we are focusing also on first responders' mental health. These are the people that see the things that we have tasked them to handle on behalf of the rest of the community. We need them to be healthy and functioning well when they respond to the very worst scenes in our communities. We are also taking important steps to hold offenders accountable. We are funding violent crime investigation teams through the BCA. We are establishing grants for crisis response and criminal investigation. We're going to be increasing the funding for Minnesota courts to help them reduce their pandemic-related backlog, expand their treatment courts. We've got prosecutor training grants. And importantly, we have a couple of categories where we are increasing criminal penalties to more reflect the significance and seriousness of the conduct that is related to that. That includes bringing the fentanyl penalties, mostly sale crimes involving fentanyl, up to the heroin criminal penalty levels. That includes the organized retail crime or organized retail theft establishment and increased penalties there as well. And establishing higher penalties for burglary in public places where a person has been trespassed from entering a public space, and then they go in anyway and commit a theft, which we are defining as burglary, just as if they're going into a private home or a private business. We're also going to be supporting victims of crime in a much more robust way. We are creating the Missing and Murdered Black Women and Girls Office. We are supporting the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office, including with a reward fund. We're going to be funding sexual assault exams across the state, so counties will no longer have to bear the financial responsibility of that, and victims of potential sexual assault crimes will not have to wait for such a long time or wonder whether their rape kits are going to be evaluated. And we are also going to be getting more detail, more information, more data on bias crimes, and we're stepping up we're expanding the scope of what is defined as a bias crime and expanding the category of crimes that are subject to bias crime penalty enhancement as well. So the bottom line is we are making very substantial investments in the safety of our communities. It's a wide-ranging, well-balanced bill that includes everything from the intervention, the early intervention, the reducing recidivism for those who are leaving incarceration. As we know, 95% of our incarcerated persons will do. And we toughen our approach to holding offenders accountable as well. It's a wide-ranging, well-balanced bill, and I look forward, I'm very proud of this bill this year, and I'm looking forward to its passage today. Thank you.
Well, first, let me say thank you to Senator Klein and Senator Lott and Senator McEwen, as you've heard about their bills. And as you know, aside from being president of the Senate, I'm also the chair of the Jobs Committee. And I've heard it once said that the best social program is a job and opportunity. And so the jobs budget bill was built on the idea that we wanted to create an economy that works for all Minnesotans. This bill does exactly that by creating jobs, growing our economy, and bolstering our workforce. A key part of this bill is equity. We are making targeted and thoughtful investments in communities of color, low-income communities, and places across greater Minnesota. It's balanced. This is about supporting all of Minnesota, no matter where you live, women, BIPOC Minnesotans, veterans, people with disabilities, folks from the cities and all across greater Minnesota stand to benefit from this legislation. We are focused on workforce issues, childcare, tourism, and manufacturing. We are positioning also Minnesota to be an industry leader in semiconductors, chips, and bio-industrial manufacturing. With investments in these industries, we are attracting hundreds of millions of dollars in both federal matching funds and private investments. This means jobs, good jobs with family-sustaining wages right here in our communities in Minnesota. In previous decades, policymakers have sent jobs across the pond or overseas. Those days are numbered. We want to begin to reinvigorate Minnesota as the leader in these areas. And so we'll continue to do those things, and we are proud of the work that we have done, the work we are doing, and the work we're going to continue to do in the future that benefits all Minnesotans. With that being said, we'll open it up for any questions that you might have from any of us standing here. So any questions?
Hey, Senator Latz, can you just remind us what the path has been for the gun bills? Were they in the omnibus bill initially and then came out, or I can't exactly remember the exact sequence of events. Can you just remind us kind of, are those moving on their own aside from the omnibus and what the status is?
Sure. There are basically 3 gun bills that are moving this session. One is the Extreme Risk Protection Order, or the red flag bill. One is the expansion of background checks, and the other is banning the Sears, the auto Sears. The background checks and the red flag bills have passed out of the Senate Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. They were re-referred to the Finance Committee, and that's where they are at this time. On the House side, they're on the floor. They're going to be part of their omnibus package when they pass that, is what I'm informed. So we are working on a plan to get all of it passed by the end of session, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to do that, and that's where it is at procedurally.
And what influenced your decision to have those bills separate from an omnibus bill?
Well, we're working on the strategy and the tactics for trying to get this all done across the finish line. Right now, we are still putting together all of our packages, and that's where we're at.
And you've included funding for those bills should they pass?
That's correct. There's funding in the omnibus bill that'll be on the floor today to cover both of those. The background check funding is more related just to aggregation of information. The red flag funding in there is principally to cover the cost of storage of any firearms that are retrieved by law enforcement agencies enforcing the red flag orders when they are made by the courts. But each of those provisions have a caveat in the budget bill that'll be on the floor today that says it's contingent funding upon passage of the underlying policy.
Senator, does anyone else have? I don't need to. Anyway, Senator Calkins have a press conference later today about what's the name exactly of the bill? It's the Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act, and they've have frustrations with the bill, saying it could reduce penalties or allow early release for juvenile prosecutions. Where the offender was tried as an adult, they're sort of tying it to the Mary Moriarty plea bargain decision and saying this is sort of another example of potentially letting people off the hook early for particularly heinous crimes. And they did attach a letter from the County Attorneys Association. At least in mid-March, they had some questions or concerns about it. I'm not sure where that stands at the moment. But can you just address, kind of, in your view, your justification for that bill, and do you think that it's risking public safety in any way, or will draw the same type of reaction as the Moriarty plea deal did?
Well, boy, that's a real false equivalency. There is no connection whatsoever between an individual county attorney's decision on how to proceed with individual cases and a much broader initiative of the Department of Corrections to address those who are committed to the Department of Corrections for prison sentences. No connection whatsoever, and I think the GOP is really struggling to try to find a message that they think is going to gain some traction here. And there's plenty of other space for conversation about the Hennepin County Attorney's decision and the Attorney General and the Governor's decision, and that's got nothing at all to do with the bill that's before us today. The Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act, the MRRA, it also baffles me that the GOP has a problem with it, and I'll tell you why. The GOP, at least historically, has been pretty pro-free economy, capitalist, profit incentive based world. And the entire MRRA is premised upon creating incentives, a profit motive, if you will, to encourage people to better themselves before they get out into the community, and when they're out in the community, to behave themselves better. So the whole theory is to take people who are presently serving time in our prisons and who, under ordinary circumstances, would be released at about 2/3 of their executed sentence time. I mean, this is standard practice. This is the way the law is right now. And I say again, 95% of our incarcerated individuals will be released from prison back into the communities. And this gives them an incentive to do the things that will make themselves better people before they're released. That means to get their GED and to participate in education programs. That means to attend and successfully complete workforce training and skills training so they have the ability to get and keep a job when they get released. That includes going through their addiction treatments. Something like 80% or more of the people in prisons have addiction problems. That's a big part of what led them to get there, and it's going to be a continuing problem when they get back into the community if they don't address it. So it's alcohol, drugs, also if they have mental health issues, and again, a massive percentage of people in our prisons have mental health issues, to get them to participate in the mental health programs that are available in prison. If they participate, are successful in these programs, the incentive is to reduce the amount of time that they remain in prison. That's a pretty big incentive for folks that are in there. It's not going to work for everyone, but it will work. It's evidence-based. We know it because we've seen it, the challenge incarceration program, the boot camp, if you will. That's just one example. And by the way, there's also funding in the program to expand that, or in our bill to expand that. So it gives them that incentive. The profit motive for them is that they get released earlier, down as low as 50% of their sentence instead of 66 2/3% of their sentence. And then when they're out in the community, they're going to have the same incentive-based program to reduce the length of their parole. So again, if they're doing what they're supposed to do in the community, they're getting a job, they're finding housing, they're engaging in pro-social activities, they're not reoffending, they're complying with all the rules of parole, they're staying in touch with their probation officers or the parole officers. If they're doing all of those things that they're supposed to be doing, they're going to be rewarded for that by reducing the length of time they're on parole. Anyone who has kids knows it's far more powerful to give them positive incentives to change their behavior, to have them behave properly, than it is to discipline them. That's just standard within the environment. Anyway, that's standard knowledge now. It wasn't 40 or 50 years ago, but it is now. So that's what this system does. These are, so if someone who's sentenced to 20 years in prison, they're still getting a 20-year prison sentence. It's just instead of getting out in 13 and a half years, they might get out in 10 years, if they do all the things they're going to do to make themselves safer for our community and better, more productive citizens when they get back into the community. That's what it is. It baffles me why the GOP would find that problematic.
Folks, we have senators that have to get to committee, so Peter,
and I'll make this last statement. The bill that has been put forward and the discussion that you just heard our chairperson talking about boils down to this. If someone doesn't want to accept the incentives, that they could find themselves doing the time that they have been commanded to do. Incentives are good. So thank you so very much.
So a quick question too. Do any of these bills Have fee increases or other revenue raisers built in?
Hello, Matt Klein, Senate District 53, Chair of the Commerce Department. The Department of Commerce charges fees to the insurance industry, to which the insurance industry accedes to cover the cost of their own regulation. Those fees, in some cases, have not been increased since 1967, and at the very most recent, in the 1990s. The insurance industry has agreed to increase those fees this year, which will generate $963,000 over the biennium, and it is not opposed by the insurance industry.
As a caucus, have you had broader conversations about other fee increases or tax increases that you might look at moving forward?
Thank you for that question. Our caucus will always continue to have as much discussion as possible to think about the needs of Minnesotans and what it will take financially in order to make that happen. We've not landed upon anything in particular, but again, those are always ongoing conversations.
In interest of transparency, the Judiciary Public Safety Bill also does have a fee increase on homeowners insurance from 0.5% to 0.65%. It's going back to what it was 10 years ago, and that was at the request of the Fire Marshal's office to increase firefighter training. And that goes into a special revenue fund, so it's a dedicated fund only for firefighters training.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Senate Minority Leader Mark Johnson and Judiciary and Public Safety Committee lead Warren Limmer called a press conference to express some of their concerns with the bills that will be heard on the Senate floor today. Here's that media event.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. Really appreciate your attendance. I know it's a busy day for a lot of you to be here. There's a lot of things to cover, especially on the Senate side this morning. So we just want to take a little time today to really focus in on public safety. We want to make sure that we were available to talk about the bills that were up today. This is the public safety aspect in particular is one of the most disappointing bills that we've seen so far this year. Something that the single party Democrat control came out with that seemed to really negate a lot of the promises that were made by Democrats during the campaign season. So I just wanted to make two quick points here before I turn this over to Senator Limmer to discuss further on the public safety bill. First of all, it's just the volume of things that are happening today. I know that you in the press are not going to be bamboozled by what's going on. This is clearly an attempt to hide some of the things that are going on, to make sure that the message is scattered, to really hide the poor parts, the disappointing parts of public safety and commerce, those sorts of issues. It's a Friday. We have three major bills on the floor, which is just jamming up you and it's jamming up the public to be able to really see the transparency of what's in the bills and what the policies really mean. So that's one of the biggest pieces that I hope that we can hit on today is just making sure that there's accountability to the Democrats, and then making sure that you open up the transparency for that as well. The second part is, so we got through campaign season, and not once did we hear campaign promises of, hey, we're going to raid your healthcare access fund. We're going to raise taxes even though we have a $17.5 billion surplus. None of the regulations were promised. None of those things were promised to Minnesotans, yet every single bill that we see on the floor today and in the past and going forward is going to create bureaucracies, it's going to create issues, it's going to destabilize systems that we've worked very hard to institute in this state to ensure that families and businesses and communities thrive. This is just one example of that. Reinsurance. Republicans worked very, very hard in instituting a nation-leading reinsurance program to ensure that the market for healthcare insurance will be stable across the state and lower costs. We've done that. And now in the Commerce bill, they're going to be removing that healthcare access fund going forward. What does that mean for our Minnesotans? What does that mean for access to health insurance for Minnesotans? This is very concerning for folks. The other thing that we have to watch out for in Commerce is the paid family medical leave. Of course, we love the idea of people having access to paid family medical leave. There's many, many different ideas, but the one that the Democrats have logged on to right now is a very, very detrimental bill has opposition from business groups, from communities, from schools, from all sorts of avenues that weren't consulted on how to do this in a way that can benefit all Minnesotans. The other part that's in that particular bill is the Drug Affordability Board. This is, again, is something that sounds good on paper, but when you look at it, it's going to reduce the access to medications and also increase costs to Minnesotans. There is so much more to focus on this. However, we're going to look back at public safety for a little bit. With that, I've got the expert here and lead in public safety, Senator Limmer, who can describe a little bit about the bill and what we're going to be seeing on the floor today. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. For those who are not familiar with who I am, I'm Warren Limmer. I'm the ranking member on the Senate Judiciary Committee. We're going to be talking about the Senate Democrat Public Safety Bill later today. It's on the floor after a number of weeks, number of months of preparation. But the final result is something that I'm very concerned about. Quite honestly, I've never seen a more dangerous bill presented from the work of the Senate Judiciary Committee. This new bill gives criminals what I would call a get out of free card, get out of jail free card, due to the policy that's been recommended by the Waltz administration through the Department of Corrections. This bill is not tough on crime. It goes in the opposite direction. It's soft on crime, and it does not address the violent repeat offenders with any stiffer penalties or longer sentences. Lastly, I believe this bill denies justice to victims. And I'll be talking about the MRRA provision in this particular bill in just a minute. What we've seen is that offenders go through the process, they get judged, they are arrested, they're judged, a sentence is imposed, but now we have a proposal to reduce that sentence after a few bureaucratic responsibilities put on an inmate. I'll be getting into that just a little bit. In the background, we still have crime on the rise. I just spoke with local police officials just a few days ago, and they said with the warmer weather, we're quickly going back to the same pattern of violent crime, carjackings, as we've had to suffer through in the last few years. And quite honestly, that's very concerning for me because this state needs to respond in a forceful and a responsible manner rather than talking about letting prisoners out from a prison or a jail. This is the key responsibility of government. I keep repeating the purpose of government. It's outlined in our Senate or in our state constitution. The purpose of government is the safety of its citizens, and yet this Senate bill seems to be focused more on the end of the criminal justice system, meaning who's in prisons and how soon can we get them out. We need to respond to the threat today. We have a provision in this bill that is created by the Department of Corrections. It's called the MRRA, meaning Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act. And for requiring inmates to take certain classes, treatment models, if they satisfactorily review these simple classes, they can reduce their good time from 2/3 time served to 50% or half time. I don't know of too many states that have that, and we're promised that recidivism will fall drastically as a result of that. Victims are denied justice when that happens. Victims expect the system of governing to protect them and to hold those who have done evil to them to be held responsible, to be held accountable. We have sentences that the legislature has created to deter future criminal activity. with our punishment. And yet, nevertheless, we seem to be going in an opposite direction right now with the MRRA program. They also have another program focused on juveniles. And, you know, again, I want to emphasize the background that we're experiencing. Rising crime rate, we've had it for 2 years. I don't think a single woman goes into a dark parking lot getting groceries late at night for their family and not very, very concerned about the potential threat that may befall her in the event that she goes out just to get that simple task for her family. Minnesotans are very concerned about their safety and the safety of their children and their loved ones, and quite honestly, I am too. Reducing sentence is not the direction we should be going. The juvenile program that is highlighted in this bill goes pretty much in the same direction, reducing by 10 years sentences on juveniles. And some of these are very serious crimes. This bill codifies a soft on crime approach by reducing sentences of juveniles that are tried as adults. These are the most serious juvenile offenders. And the reason I call it serious, I'm going to read a number of sentences and crimes that they've committed that are in juvenile detention facilities. This bill will reduce those sentences by 10 years. And it's retroactive, by the way. The first sentence, and there's 96 individuals who have these crimes that they have been held in prison for. An axe murder of parents and a sibling. The stabbing and slitting of a throat of a homeless individual. The beating and stabbing with a screwdriver of a victim while the victim was being raped. Baseball bat beating death of a blind man. Stabbing a woman to death 193 times, and also killing in the process a 10-year-old child. Brutal rape of a girl who has mental and physical disabilities. The legislators who are going to vote on this bill are going to have to look in the eyes of those families who have had victims in their families or the victims themselves trying to justify this bill. I'm really sad to explain the bill this way. The MRRA program, if I can go back to that, that also has a list of very serious offenses. This program would make available or make eligible 7,400 felons. 92% of our felon population in prisons today would be eligible for the MRRA program and get out early with 50% time served. These offenses, they don't include every offense. They exclude first-degree murder and some very egregious sex offenses. Nevertheless, they include murder in the second or third degree, manslaughter, certain elements of rape, aggravated robbery, carjacking, kidnapping, assault, drive-by shootings, crimes committed to benefit a gang, kingpin drug dealing, auto theft. The list goes on and on. Minnesotans should be very concerned about this bill. All I have ever heard during our campaign year last year, all I've heard for about the last 4 to 5 years is the rising violent crime in Minnesota. And this is the response that we're going to offer the public in order to keep them safe, is to create this gigantic $880 million bill that goes in the direction of a bigger bureaucracy, of reaching out to be soft on offenders that are already convicted, that are already in prison, and giving a program to get out early. I don't even know if we can justify it constitutionally You know, we have separation of powers. We have the judicial system, we have the legislative, we have the administration. The judicial branch, those judges who have given those court orders when finding someone guilty of heinous crimes, ordered them into prison for a certain amount of time. We trust those judges to make appropriate sentences. And now legislatively, we're going to reduce those very same court orders and give a reason for someone to get out early. We have probation. We rely on probation quite a bit in Minnesota, where, as a backdrop, many of you know, Minnesota ranks one of the lowest states for incarcerating prisoners. Down like second to third lowest in the country. This will probably bring them down to the very basement floor. And yet at the same time, I just don't understand why we are not protecting the public more so with stricter responses, stiffer penalties, quicker reaction. Quite honestly, I can't say anything without stating the county attorney in Hennepin County, Mary Moriarty, of how she's responded in her job in convicting two individual teenagers who brutally murdered a young girl and only agreeing to a very soft sentence for those two juveniles. Just a few short years. But that poor family that lost their daughter has been pleading for justice. Finally, someone listened, and I have my hats off to Attorney General Ellison for stepping in. We're going to be watching very closely prosecutors in the next few years. This is vitally important. This is a key element in that train of criminal justice that we have, from an arrest to a conviction to a sentence, and later probation, and hopefully with the process of rehabilitating that individual. But being a former correction officer, I know there are some that I don't believe ever should get out. But they are. We have created the sentencing for all of those, and we allow the judges to make those appropriate decisions. I'll stand for any questions.
Back to the juvenile part that you mentioned, reducing those sentences by up to 10 years, I believe it was. You went on to list a couple of crimes, throat slitting, axe murder, those sorts of things. Are those, just so I understand, crimes that would be eligible for early release, or what hoops would they have to jump through to actually get that early release?
That bill is written retroactively. They would be eligible for early release. The new standard would be lowered down as much as 10 years.
But just to understand, they would be eligible. They wouldn't be just released immediately, and what does that eligibility look like?
They would have to have a process reviewed, of course.
Yeah. Is there any word on what that process looks like to get that early release done?
I don't have that information in front of me right now.
Are you talking about, in those cases, you mentioned the axe murder, is that David Brom? Are you saying is that who you're talking about?
I don't have names on the particular violations.
The individuals are included in that attachment I sent last night.
Okay.
I can double check, but we can look at that. And there is a review board for these cases too, but it's very, very vague as to what the standard is.
So you don't, and the boys who killed, it sounds like the Tricia Daniels case was Stefan Thompson and Brian Flowers. You can't speak to the specificity of when they might be able to get out?
Well, it would be up to the review board to decide. Those are good questions to ask Democrats what they expect of this review board.
So Senator Latz, earlier today was basically saying this is a public safety provision because these people have more incentive to be rehabilitated and to get themselves straight before they re-enter society. You're just not buying that line of logic?
We have a system of probation that does exactly the same thing. It's just that the incarceration is longer. It follows existing state law. We are a state that doesn't use incarceration to a high degree. We rely on probation. we have longer probation periods of time. Although the Wallace administration through the Sentencing Guidelines Commission reduced probation to a maximum 5 years. There's some serious offenses in that as well. But I'm not going to talk about that right now, but it's a footnote. This administration, this bill is not only one piece of Democrat direction in the criminal justice system, this is an addition to what has already been in the works. And the Waltz administration, with his appointees on the Sentencing Guidelines Commission, got soft on probation periods, max probation times as well.
This bill doesn't contain any new gun measures, but it contains the money should new gun measures pass this year. What do you make of that?
Well, I think what they're doing is it's kind of a contingency plan. We don't know if that plan will pass or not. But if it does, the money will be there. If it does not, this money, well, if it doesn't have a designated purpose that's real, I would imagine that money will have to be absorbed somewhere else or just not imposed.
But do you see this bill as a vote on gun restrictions, Senator Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the House bill, where they are going to be loading up, I believe, a number of the actually policy provisions for that, they're going to have to partner that up with some funding, and that's what this bill does. So by allowing this to be in the bill, you're clearly clearing the path for those gun control bills to go forward. And so this is, I mean, this is a very, you split up the funding from the policy, but then conference committee, they'll join up. So any vote for this is simply a vote for opening up that pathway for those particular bills going forward.
So your expectation is the funding could pass in this bill, the House would pass the policy, and then they'd go into conference, and then it'd come back to you as an up or down with the gun provisions? That's right. As opposed to a separate vote on the Senate floor?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When it comes to the MRRA, and either of you guys can answer this, but is it just, do you feel like the incentives in there, the programs that they would be going through just wouldn't be enough to make any sizable difference? Or what is that, what is your opinion on the actual incentives in that program and their ability to do what the Democrats are saying they would do?
Well, perhaps one should ask the question, should the low-level prisoner that's incarcerated now, the habitual prisoner, or the person who has a habitual problem with drugs, is that prisoner different than the person who committed second-degree murder? This provision, the MRRA program, the act itself, covers all prisoners, 7,400 prisoners. They all will be eligible to get out of prison at half-time rather than two-thirds time. There's no guarantee they're going to pass all of those courses. And there's no guarantee that they're truly going to be rehabilitated at the end of their program and released. So quite honestly, I think this is a way overbroad program when it includes every single inmate with the exception that are made. So quite honestly, this MRRA program needs some serious revisions. Right now, it is not safe for the public.
Senator, do you regret not getting to a deal last year when you had the gavel? Because a lot of the things you talked about the violent crime, the carjackings, you were within reach of having that happen, but depending on whose account you buy, somebody walked away from the table.
Well, there's no sense having a meeting when the other side never alters their first proposal repeatedly. So there comes a time when you have to realize that there is no chance for a compromise. We offered ours, got thrown back in our face. So after 2 or 3 times of those, I only have 2 sides of my face that I can turn the cheek on. So quite honestly, do I regret it? I regret for the public's safety that we didn't move forward and provide adequate protection for our citizens with more funding for law enforcement, something that this program really does not provide for the local police departments. When I talk to public about criminal justice, they want our police departments to be adequately prepared so they can address swift punishment, swift arrest, and that they can keep our streets safe. This bill is woefully inadequate to that purpose.
Just a logistical question, the $550 million the governor's talked about for local public safety, that's not, is this traveling in a different bill? Is that in the tax bill, not this bill?
We haven't seen the tax.
But
I believe that is
it's not in
separate.
this.
That's a separate provision.
Could you just comment, I'm trying to make sense of this, because it seems like maybe you're saying that the administration is in conflict with itself. Because on the one hand, you said hats off to Attorney General Ellison for stepping in this case with Mary Moriarty, and that is in conflict then, that what's happening there is different from what the administration is proposing in this bill.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, we use the word administration, and we kind of forget that it's supposed to administrate the policies that the legislature creates. County attorneys are part of that administration too, but on a local level. They're the ones that are responsible to prosecute criminals. When they don't do their job adequately and don't follow state law and settle on very lax and reduced sentencing, they're not following the dictates of our state law. Attorney General Ellison, I think, agrees with me. That's why he took the case, in order to review it and hopefully come to a conclusion that two kids that murder a young girl should be held to a higher standard and have a higher accountability. I don't think there's any confusion between administration. Attorney General Ellison has his own administration. The governor has his. So there is a separation.
Leader Johnson, could you kind of
We're open for questions. We want to take all your questions all day long, Senate Republicans.
Can you elaborate on the opposition to the Prescription Affordability Board in the Commerce Bill?
Sure, and that's one of those issues that we're working through with the Commerce Bill right now. I mean, if you talk to industry, if you talk to end users on that one, there's no guarantee within that bill that you're going to be seeing reduced costs. Even the author themselves, on both sides, can't point to how those costs are going to be going down to the consumers, how those cost savings are going to be going down to the consumers. And that's where we really have a problem, is because you have this accountability board, but who are they holding accountable? If it's not working for drug users or for the users of those pharmaceuticals, then I don't see a point in having that, other than it creates another layer of bureaucracy at that point. So that's one of our biggest oppositions to it. If we saw effectiveness on it, then great, but there's no, when you're reading language, there really isn't any outcome that's guaranteed to help Minnesotans.
Senator Johnson, during that conversation we had the other day, you kind of mentioned, I asked a question about if it feels difficult to get things done in this session. With all these omnibus bills coming up, does it feel like Republicans in the Senate have a say in this stuff, or do you guys kind of just have you conceded that this is going to pass the way it is anyway?
Yeah, so I wouldn't use the word conceded. I think we are. It's been an interesting year this year. That's one of the things that Minnesotans really ask for is, hey, Republicans, Democrats, we just want to see you work together, right? You have rural outstate, which is represented primarily by Republicans, metro that's being represented by Democrats primarily. And it feels like, even though we're only one seat down, they've completely shut out at least half the state, in these conversations. It hasn't been a bipartisan work environment that it's normally been. even in the minority last year, when we were majority, we always worked with the minority party on ideas and things that would work in districts and in metro and in areas like that. This year, if you go back and you look at the bills and committee hearings, you'll see very, very few amendments, even entertaining questions that Republican minority would have. They've cut off all of that. And so it's hard to have that bipartisan work ethic going forward when you don't even have a voice at the table at that point. So I'm hoping that things will change at this point, that maybe we can be more part of that conversation as we get closer to the end of session. But no, so far this year, it has been a single party control across House, Senate, and the governor's office. So that's been a very disappointing part of it.
It's a beautiful Friday. Are you planning to be at Senate all day and all night?
Peter, do you have some questions today too? So it's going to be a long day. We have three large bills up today with the jobs and the labor, and then we have the commerce bill, and then also judiciary public safety. And we have, as you can see, concerns. This is just a judiciary bill. If you want to go through commerce and you want to do the jobs, it's going to be a long night. So hopefully you get a sandwich and you get settled in somewhere sunny, and then you can watch the proceedings on the floor.
Have you been apprised of this big amendment apparently coming to the Health and Human Services bill? Does it have to do with nursing home funding? What do we know?
I'm not aware in detail on that amendment.
I know the room is booked at 11, but I don't see anyone, so if we're done, we can wrap up or more questions.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today. Good job.
You bet.